I am unashamed. What about you?
I'm not a golfer. I'm not sure why I do that to myself.
It's like a 3-day tournament, right?
3-day and a practice round. So
Oh,
by
my God.
day 3 or 4, you're basically just trying to get finished.
Well, so you were still playing. We had a little feed at my house yesterday. Dad got in on. You were the only one not there because y'all were still playing.
Yeah.
But Willie and Jeff had played already and finished their round. But
Well, they were in the undercard. I was up there with the big boys, and that's what happens.
I understand that they left that part out because I was like, "Where's Jase?" They're like, "Oh, he's still playing." Like you just were playing slow or something. I don't know.
No. They the better you are, the later you go. Just watch a golf tournament. So, but we finished like one shot out. But look, I'm gonna tell you why I was there because this was a nice tournament. But if you had a hole in one on number 17, you won a very nice truck. I'm assuming it was a $60,000-$70,000 truck.
Ooh.
For $100 with 3 chances, I thought. So day one,
I bet they had that hole set up hard though.
Day one, it was long. It was like 190 yards.
Uh-huh.
So day one, I hit it left. Couldn't handle it. I was like, just couldn't deal with the fact of winning this truck. So day two, I hit it better. Still a little left. I got up there yesterday, and a sense of peace came over me, and I thought about that verse. Nothing's impossible. I looked over at that truck.
With God, all things are.
I said, I'm fixing to win this truck. So I got up there. I did my little waggle, focused. I hit it. And when I looked and saw the ball and the way, you know how it feels when you flush one, I said, that's it. Where's the keys? In flight.
The ball's still in the air.
It was going dead at it. I said, this is it. This just happened. I was ready. I was already thinking about the celebration because 190 yards is a long way. But it hit the green, and it started rolling, and I saw it just going a hair left. It was about 7 feet. It was dead pin high, but it was about 7 feet.
You have it back left? The pin was back left?
No, it was in the middle.
Okay.
Close, but no truck.
So I told Missy, I said, well, she said, did y'all win? I said, nope. I said, but I came 7 feet from winning a brand new truck. She said, is that supposed to be good?
She wasn't too impressed, was she?
So she said, so you didn't have a hole in one? I said, no. She said, so you made birdie? I said, no, I missed the putt. Nice par.
No truck, no birdie.
Just
Nice
a par.
Just a par.
So that pretty well sums up that. Well, I will say this.
With that plan, not many trucks are given away.
I'm sure no truck was given
Very
away.
few.
Nobody made a. Trust me, I would hurt.
Right.
Look, I will say this because I was making fun of Jeff. The only time I thought the truck was won, because this is not like the Masters. You hear zero applause.
Right.
There were a few fans and supporters wandering around, but there was one moment that I heard an eruption, loud.
You thought
And I said, somebody just won that truck. So I went to the clubhouse. I look, and Jeff is just beaming. It like a glow. I said, you made a hole in one? He said, yeah, I hold it. I said, you won the truck? And he said, no, they had a chip off for $5. Yeah, you won, some Jelly of the Month Club membership or something. But look, so here's what's funny. So Jeff, when he come up there, they said, all right, you get one free one. And then for $5, you can get an extra one. So Jeff gave him $20 and said, well, I want 5 because I get a free one. So about his 4th chip, and it's not very far, he makes it. So Jeff said, I make the chip, it's a big eruption. He said, then I heard a guy say, well, it must be nice just to have an endless amount of money that you could just buy chips from. So Jeff said, that kind of dampened my spirit.
Oh, man, poor Jeffy Coe. No, he actually told me I think he won a golf bag or something pretty nice for.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was.
There was a prize for that.
Always remember, Jace, you need to make money the old-fashioned way. You earn it.
Well, Phil, it is. Look, it is the best golfers win. I consider it a skill. Because look, they weren't giving you prizes for winning the tournament. They gave you money. So we just didn't perform up to our expectations.
Well, you don't play enough to really.
We didn't. No, well, my partner's good,
Yeah.
so he's got to play outstanding, and I got to play a little
So it's
better.
a two-person four-ball, right? In the
Yeah.
best score.
So basically, you play the hole, and if your score is better than your partner's, you play your score. But you play by the rules of golf, so that makes it tough. But what I was going to say, it was Labor Day, and so when I'm coming home, I mean, I was disappointed for about 30 seconds, and then I moved on. I mean, because you're not going to feel bad about getting to play golf. But I came around the corner in our neighborhood, and I looked, and there was like 7 kids. You know where those 2 Doberman pinchers usually stand up? They're like, somebody has the same look as that. What was that show where the guy had the 2?
It was a Magnum PI. In fact, that's what I call it. When I walk by there and see them, they're sitting there, they're looking. They don't usually make a sound. They're just looking at you like, you one wrong move, you're dead. And they have the shock collars that keep them in the yard. But I'm thinking, I don't walk right by.
Not shock collars. It's
Not
the sensor for the. They have some sensor now for yards where when they get near it,
It
got
beeps.
something on. Yeah, that beeps or whatever.
Yeah, it's like a wireless fence, or a fenceless fence. But when I walk by, they're sitting there. But I call them the lads because on the Magnum PI, that's what the little British guy called them, the lads.
So what I was gonna say was 7, 8 kids. I stopped because I was like, "What y'all doing?" And because they had a little booth set up and they were waving and they said we're selling lemonade. And I said, "Well, what's the occasion?" And there was one girl. I mean, these were probably 8, 9, 10.
One of them was Cody's daughter.
No, I know.
Yeah, okay.
Well, look, she said, we're selling lemonade. I said, why? She said, well, it's Labor Day. I said, oh. I said, well, I got one question for you. Of course, I didn't realize that was his daughter because kids grow so fast and they come in and out, and there's so many kids coming in and out of my house.
You don't know.
I said, I got one question for you. She was looking at me. I said, actually, I have 2 questions. I said, but one's important. I said, do you love Jesus? And she said, I sure do. I said, well, you're going to get a tip. I said, the other question is, who has the cleanest hands out of this crew? Because I'm just looking at this crew. And she said, well, that would be me. I said, you fix the lemonade. So it came out, she's like, that's $1. I think I gave her like $9.
Yeah.
And she said, well, you're giving me way too much. I said, no, when you said you love Jesus, I could tell you didn't fake that. Your response was natural and real. And she said, well, I'm Cody's daughter. I was like, Cody, who? She's like, we were just at your house last night. I was like, well, man, you sure have changed in 24 hours. And then the boy who's standing next to her said, well, I'm her brother. I said, oh, sorry, buddy, I didn't recognize you.
Everything's coming back together here.
So what I was saying, though, is so that made me go home and look up why we celebrate Labor Day.
Oh, boy.
Well, do y'all know?
Of course I know.
Well, let's hear it.
I'm a citizen. You celebrate all the workers, all the people that have, built our country and built our nation.
What started it? Do you know that?
I don't know. I don't know the origin, though.
That's why I say I looked it up. In the late, and I think this is important. Why? Because in the last 10 years, I've seen a fall of the American worker.
No doubt.
Yeah.
No
And
doubt.
everybody
that is
I
true.
bump into who has some kind of management position, they can't find anybody that will work. So
it.
I thought, well, shouldn't we have addressed that on Labor Day?
Yeah.
I saw those kids doing that, and I don't know if it was their idea, if their parents said, well, it's Labor Day, go
Labor.
go labor. But because that was her answer. She said, it's Labor Day. And I thought, oh, so you're working because it's Labor Day. So when I looked it up, basically, back then times were tough. We're talking late 1800s. And so they used one day to try to improve conditions at the workplace because it was rough. It wasn't very
sanitary
or
probably safe.
They were working, the average person was working 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
That's what it said. So, and Kit, you worked all the way down to 5 and 6 years old. There wasn't this child labor law.
Right.
No. So they did it, and they did it locally at a few places, but then there was some riot, and I read the whole thing, can't remember it all, and then the president at that time just went ahead and made it a national holiday. Said, no, we're
One
once a
time,
year we're going to
our
address the
thought
work.
processes was if you don't work, you don't eat, a biblical verse.
Yep.
But they got around that by saying if you don't work, you'll still be fed because the government will feed you.
Right.
So they stepped in, thinking they were doing a brilliant thing, help out the poor.
Well, there are some people in need, but there are more people who take advantage of that.
Right.
Yep.
Well, and it's always a pendulum swing because obviously the situation you described, Jase, it was too far the other way. People were taken advantage of, and it wasn't safe. But now the pendulum has gone so far the other way. These kids are showing us the way. We have to have a Labor Day to work that day. So the holiday, now there's so many not working that you almost need a day to say, hey, why don't we go to work?
I'm telling you, the number one reason I quit going to fast food, it wasn't because it was fast food. And I'm excluding Chick-fil-A because you'll understand why when I tell you this. I waited about, I would say, 15 or 20 minutes. That was the first thing.
So it wasn't fast.
Wasn't fast. And I won't name the chain because I don't want to start a fight. And so I get up to the window.
Just about any of them, Jase.
And the girl shoved this bag out that had grease stains on the outside of the bag. And she went, here. And it just did something to me.
It broke you.
I grabbed it and I was like, thank you. She was just looking at me.
Get out of here.
I was saying you should have said thank you, but she thought I was thanking her for going here. I thought, you know what? We came in here, you're working because I'm stopping.
Yeah.
And people like me. You can at least be courteous in that moment, even if you don't believe it. Just here? No. I said, I'm out. Is that, you think I overreacted?
Well,
I think there were other factors subconsciously because I'm just not a big fan of fast food. But I think that's why Chick-fil-A is so successful.
they work on their customer service. The people are friendly. They say hello.
Al, they're like, over the top.
It's fast. They're busy and it's fast.
Yeah.
I go every time I come out here to get chicken biscuits.
Well, I'm sure not all Chick-fil-A's are created equal, but the one in our
I
home.
don't know that I've been to a bad one, but you're right. It's what it is. But Jace, that's all in training. Like they should be trained. They should be trained to do this stuff.
Yeah.
These are kids,
You should be courteous and respectful and act like you're, working.
Yeah. Because
while you're trying to figure it all out, I did a little light research, Jase, and this will be for you to answer because you'll have the answer or you'll make one up. I never found the word pulpit in the Bible.
well, hang on.
Not one word.
Hang on. This sounds like this one needs to. Let's take a break and then we'll get back into it. So we talk a lot on the Unashamed podcast about eternal health care and eternal insurance. That's Dad always talks about that. And that's what heaven is, right? That's what our faith in Jesus leads us to. But while we're on earth, we do have to deal with these matters. And one of them is life insurance. And so, I don't know, nobody likes to really try to do all of that themselves and try to figure this out. So we got a company, one of our sponsors, that's going to help figure that out for you. It's called Policy Genius. And what they do is they're going to find you the cheapest rates for life insurance, and they're going to give you the options to figure that out. You could save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes with Policy Genius. Options start at just $17 per month for $500,000 worth of coverage. PolicyGenius.com/Phil. You get those personalized quotes. They don't add on extra fees. Your personal information is private. They don't sell it to third parties and things like that. They've helped over 30 million people shop for insurance and place over $150 billion in coverage. So head to PolicyGenius.com/Phil to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. PolicyGenius.com/Phil to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you can save.
Now, the dictionary says it's a raised portion
Yeah.
where a a person gets, and he's talking to people down below him. But pulpit, I can't find the word in the Bible. You would think, Jase, if you're going to use pulpit, the word pulpit, you would at least
Non-biblical term.
Yeah. Well, who made that up? Because it's not the Bible, but God didn't say anything about it. So how did we end up thinking?
It's right in between evangelism and rapture.
Yeah.
I don't think either one of those two are in there either.
Well,
You are correct.
There you go. So it makes you wonder, why would they come up with this word where the only place that a crowd's being spoken to, Christians, is a guy, a preacher, who's in a raised portion talking to them. And I'm thinking, well, the next morning you're out there, going down the river in a boat, and you pull over and you're talking to someone about Jesus. So where's the pulpit? How does that fit in to a person following Jesus every week? I mean, well, when does he?
Do you want my answer?
How many people are actually
Not really.
get in a position that's known as the pulpit? How many are gathered?
Well, here's my answer.
So did theologians dream that up, Jace, or did it just?
I do not know where the actual word came from.
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
And I do not like the idea of that word because it is not in the Bible. But now, people who revere the pulpit are going to say, well, you got to stand somewhere. The problem I have with it is
you wait a minute.
People acquit.
No, you don't have to stand anywhere. In other words, if we're Christ's ambassadors, as though God was making his appeal through us, I'm trying to figure out where the pulpit word enters the.
Well, I'm saying if you're going to get up and speak, I would rather somebody get up where everybody can see him than he just do it sitting down and we're all pointing the same direction. That would be weird. So I get it. You got to get up. Here. Let me finish my thought. My problem is that people equate that with some kind of power.
That's what I'm scared.
Or holiness.
That's what I'm wondering about right there.
So with that, that's why I don't like it, and I like multiple people getting up on various occasions because I think it keeps it from becoming. There's one king. His name's Jesus.
Yeah. It looks like the Apostle Paul and them, without realizing it, but the areas they ended up in preaching the gospel on top of Mars Hill, down next to the temple where the Jews were, or in the synagogues, if he could stay a little while, they'd run him off.
Hey, we're on to something, Phil.
The Apostle,
now, you know what we should
Paul was going around, and to him, the world itself was the pulpit.
Yeah.
Wherever you are on earth and you're speaking
Here's
the
what I
message,
propose, though.
Let me give you some historical context because this may help shape your. Because I see y'all are running into some theology here. So the ancient Greek, the Greek word is bema, so it's been around a long time. It means platform or step. But the pulpit has actually been around pre-Christianity, ancient Greece and Rome, because then they would philosophize.
I'm aware of that.
So that's the origin. So it actually predates Christianity, which is stronger to your point, actually, Dad, because you probably should hear something out in the Bible since that predates the New Testament.
Is the word in the Bible?
The word is not in the Bible.
Yep.
Well, here's what I was going to say.
So
it's used so much, and it seems to be the centerpiece of America's Christian groups. It seems to be the spot. It's elevated. It's literally.
I've been to Mars
elevated.
Hill, and you have too, right?
Yep.
So why don't we just put a Mars Hill in all the buildings?
Now you're
Make
getting
it out of
somewhere.
rock.
Now you're beginning to think
Then
like
it would
I'm
make
thinking.
you be in context, Al.
Yeah, I could do the rock.
But would
I've
they?
done far more sharing Jesus with people away from a pulpit.
Yeah.
It's not even a factor.
Well, here's another fact.
Everything I do, Monday through Saturday, talking to people, on the riverbank, you're standing here, you're standing there. it's just something about the place where you have to stand in order to preach is the
to your
pulpit.
point-
To get in the
well, to
pulpit.
your point, Phil,
and
they-
99.9% of all human beings never get a shot at the pulpit.
But
Well, I'm just thinking, well, why would we
I'm
go
gonna answer
down
your
that road?
question because now, where were they primarily meeting in the New Testament?
Homes.
Homes, here,
where-
there, and
where-
yonder.
wherever
They have
they could.
pulpits in their homes.
They'd have to drag one or make one.
So that's my point. I think your overall
They'd have to
point.
elevate it, and then if you stand there, then you need to listen to
think
him
if
because
you're-
he's in the pulpit.
It represents part of the problem with the modern church.
Now you're beginning to read my
Now, let me
mind.
tell you another thing, and this y'all might like this. So there's another use of the word other than what we're talking about here. The bow of a boat, ship, is also called the pulpit, especially on the old whaling ships. And you remember on Jaws when he goes out and shoots the shark with the harpoon? That's called the pulpit on a boat. So in that context, it was used for fishing, which kind of goes back to what our overall
I'm
goal
simply
is.
asking the
That'd be a
question.
perfect
Fishers
place
and
to
men.
share Jesus
Yeah.
with to a bunch of fishermen on a boat.
That's right, in front of the boat.
Isn't that
See,
what
my
Jesus
point, I'm
did?
getting to the part on where I don't see how you pull together pull and pit. I don't know what's the pit, what part is the pit, and what part is
Maybe
the
you're
pull.
trying to pull people out of the pit. Maybe that's where it came from.
Well, it's a 1L pull, so I don't know. But a pit, it can be a pit, depending on what's coming out of there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think your point is, I agree, that if you put all your
I say if the
Christianity
message,
into that moment for 1 hour, whether somebody's speaking, even the worship. I mean, if you're only worshiping an hour a week, let's just take worship. Let's get on that. If you're only worshiping an hour a week, if you're worshiping God an hour a week, how many hours are there in a week?
156.
160,
168.
168.
That's right.
So let's say you worship God an hour a week.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
It's not good.
And only one person is talking, and you don't have the chance of saying, "Preacher, what are you talking about?" Because
Well, you can say, well, I told you in some churches
you
they
can't
do.
question what's coming out of the pulpit because that's the official
Well, I've
place
already
to
said,
stand.
I think we should say, well, if we don't agree. But I've done it about 3 times, and everybody looked around like, what'd he say?
That's
I mean, I didn't say it loud. I was just like, well.
Well, I'm thinking, so I'll wrap it all up in my head. Anywhere you're standing, sharing Jesus with the world, oh, you're in the pulpit.
Okay, now we're
But
talking.
you're just not gonna
I
use
agree with that. That's
You don't
good.
have to be the ordained
No,
person
that's
to
good.
be in the
no,
pulpit. Yeah.
no.
I mean, I think it has a purpose. It has a function, but you're right. That has
Well,
a bigger function.
And
Just a thought.
And the word itself is so much moved past just the lectern or the stand or whatever, because it's even a position. They'll say, "Oh,
And if you noticed, it's sought without saying it is considered hallowed ground because that's where
it's down front."
which I'm just a little
Well,
leery
right.
after studying Hebrews.
Right.
We're getting down to where you're standing and who are the ones you're listening to, and if he's not up in an elevated portion of the premises,
Yeah.
he's not the man.
But when you go to Europe and so now a lot of the old cathedrals that are there are like museums. We went to one. Remember when we were in Paris, we went into Notre Dame.
Oh yeah,
And it's more of a museum. But I notice it's funny when you go down front, there'll be signs there that says "Don't come here."
that's right.
You can walk around. You pay $20.
It's almost in the minds of many religious people. It's almost hallowed ground, and I just don't think it should be that way.
Well, we even use words like sanctuary and stuff like that, which kind of takes it back to the temple. It's a modernization of the temple idea that we talked a lot about in
The
Hebrew.
book of Hebrews, if it hasn't done anything else, it crushed that part, that way of thinking.
Right. Exactly. And look,
Jesus has gone through the greater and more perfect tabernacle,
Right.
heaven itself.
Yeah.
So this whole thing about camping out, with one guy standing but up in an elevated portion, I think it just needs to be rethought.
Well, I think you're right, and we all need to realize we're part of this. I mean, I spoke at our church this past Sunday. I stood up front. We didn't have a pulpit there anymore; it was just a little table.
I was at a little table in a
Oh,
little
y'all
house.
calling the little thing? What is
Well,
it?
that's actually the pulpit, the stand that's what the word actually means, is that what but like I said, Dad's right. It's expanded to a position of authority in a place
That's right.
of almost
That's what scares me.
yeah, which is not, you're right, it's not biblical at all. Just kind of has graduated at that point. Hang on, let's take a break. So one of my favorite sponsors is a group called Bespoke Post, and their website is called Box of Awesome, which is an awesome name for a website. But they send you a monthly, kind of like a surprise package, and so you go in and you tell them what you like, the kind of things you like, and then they're going to send you some things. A little package shows up every month, and Jase, this showed up when I got back home from my last trip, because you like bags, right? So I'm gonna,
when I need one.
here, I'm going to give that one to you right now, so you can just love on it.
You don't have to give me a Christmas present.
Oh yeah, now you're taken care of. So this thing is heavy duty. I could see you putting some of your hunting grip in there or things like that. But that's one of the things that comes because it's hunting, it's outdoor, it's a lot of really cool stuff. To get started, you go to boxofawesome.com. You're going to take a quiz, and that way you can get the right stuff. They release new boxes every month and across different categories. With each Box of Awesome, you're supporting a small business, and 90% of everything that comes in your Box of Awesome is from a small up-and-coming brand. So I like that because they're trying to help these small companies in our culture. It's free to sign up. You can skip a month, or you can cancel anytime, so you're not locking into some long-term thing. But I think you'll love it. I do. Get 20% off your first monthly box when you sign up at boxofawesome.com. and enter the code PHIL at checkout. That's boxofawesome.com. Use the code PHIL, 20% off your first box.
All right, you want the review and a sermon for you in 13? Yeah. Hebrews 13.
Hebrews 13. We're almost through with the book.
So we went through how great Jesus is. We got to
Jesus
faith.
is superior.
We got to hope. Faith, Hebrews 11. We got to hope, Hebrews 12. Then we get to love. He says, keep on loving each other as brothers. So we love one another. That's biblical. I think we went through that. We love strangers. Do not forget to entertain strangers, for by doing so, to your point, Phil, that to do that, you're going to have to get out of the building mindset.
Yeah, don't.
I mean, there might, every once in a while they'll say, if there's a visitor here, welcome them. But let's face it, in most churches, visitors are rare. Do you agree?
My point is, but don't forget verse 23.
I'm getting there.
When you come to Jesus, you've come to the church of the firstborn, whose
That's
name
12:23.
Yeah, 12. You have come to God, the judge of all men, and listen to this, Jase. You have come to the spirits of righteous men, and this phrase is small but powerful. Made perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, we're going to get to that.
Ones.
We're going to get to that. So we got loving brothers, loving one another, loving strangers. Then he said, love those who are being persecuted. Love the ones who are out there really getting persecuted for Jesus. Remember verse 3? Remember those in prison as if you were their fellow prisoners, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves.
No room for a pulpit there, Jase.
Okay, you're on this today, Phil. So 4. Now you can't have a pulpit in marriage, or that's not gonna work.
You better
Somebody's standing in an elevated
have
position saying, here's the way you...
Now, see, Phil, to your argument, because you're saying, well, God has made us perfect, which is true, right? You just read it. But if you declare in your marriage like that statement,
I'm perfect.
I'm perfect, it's not going to go well. I have done it.
Turn it around and say, nobody's perfect. That's a lie. Jesus, it was the perfect one who has made his people perfect forever. Yeah. The Hebrew writer says.
I know. I tried it. with the wife. Now, that was early on in the marriage, and it just didn't go well.
Yeah.
Because I was saying, technically, I'm perfect. God forgave me, and you have to, too. You have to view me as perfect.
She's perfect too.
I know, but I was saying, she wasn't viewing me as perfect in that moment because I had messed up, and she was mad. I said, you got to love me.
That's why you remind her you're perfect and she's perfect. Why are we arguing about such a little matter on who's going to feed the dogs this morning? I mean,
So Dad was there.
Not sure what the. I'm sure we've had an argument.
marriage
over who's
should be honored by
So I was
all.
gonna say,
That includes you, and start with you and your wife.
I was
that
gonna
should
say,
be honored.
You love, but if you add the category for your sermon now, so you love one another, you love the strangers, you love those being persecuted, you love in the marriage,
Love your spouse.
and with or without kids. So you love the family
Yep.
dynamic there.
I like
Yep.
where you're
Now,
going.
then he takes a time out there and said, because when he gets to marriage, which is the most difficult venture, based on the stats that 60% of people now getting married or getting divorced.
Something like that,
Or-
between
yeah.
50 and 60.
So he takes a time out and he brings up the two most argued things about in marriage, and pretty much in society, that there is. I mean, we didn't stop there. We left off here in our last podcast before our guest, but
Yeah.
when you think about it, because he brought up, what did he bring up? He brought up sex and money. Because he says, for God will judge the adulterer and all the sexual immoral. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me?
It's a great way to roll.
So what I was going to say is, so he gives these things we should love. Each other, the marriage, those being persecuted, even strangers, because we're God's ambassadors. We represent him. Well, then it's like he gives the motivation to love, to do that. I mean, the first one is the one I just read when he said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. And that's a quote from Deuteronomy 31. The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? Which is a quote from Psalm 118. So I was going to ask y'all what y'all thought about, when he brought up the two things that we argue about the most. Now, he gave the answer to the money one because he says, be content with what you have.
Right.
I mean, because my point is it's about love, because it's like people commit adultery and they're immoral in the name of love. And he's talking about loving one another, obviously loving him as he loves us. And then he's like, keep yourselves free from the love of money, which my point is, the theme is things you love or people you love.
And things you should.
And things you pursue. Because we're all pursuing something. Everybody listening to my voice, there's something that is the predominant pursuit of their life.
Yep.
It may be money. It may be sex. It may be
Rock and roll.
It may be rock and roll. It might be fishing. It might be car racing.
Yep.
But it's more times than not money or sex or some kind of relationship that.
And money is a root of all kinds of evil. Be careful with your internet getting rich quick, Jase, when you say, I'm going to put this much money. Be careful that it doesn't get to such a point that it begins to be your focal point on planet Earth.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Look, it's not just the acts. The pursuit of it can be overwhelming.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, I just saw
There's a mighty number of individuals that the love of money brought them down.
Yeah, I just saw, a couple of days ago, this one of the stocks, Bed Bath and Beyond, which has been what they call a meme stock. The stock goes way up and it goes way down. It has nothing to do with the business. People are just, and the business is not doing very well. But the CFO who had sold a bunch of stock. Just so happened when it was up, and then it went down, and people started investigating it and said, wait a minute now, what's going on? Well, he just went out and jumped off a building, and that just happened yesterday. Killed himself. And I thought, how tragic is that? Well, the first thing I looked up, which was hard to find, because I wanted to see if he had a family. Of course he did.
Yep.
Had a wife and $2. And I thought about this passage. I mean, It's sad because you feel for them.
Did he say why he jumped off the building?
Hang on, let's take a break. So you have 360 joints from your neck down the vertebrae, down your arms, hips, knees, and feet. 360. It's almost a joint per day that can go wrong. They take a beating with daily activity, but also, I don't know if you know this, Dad, but we're not getting any younger. So as we age, your joints hurt. Sometimes they mess up your sleep and things like this. So one of our longtime sponsors, and also Dad and I do some spokeswork for these folks, is called Omega XL. And basically they explain the science of when you're young, your bodies produce something called SPMs, and they keep your joints healthy. But as you age, your body quits producing as many, and that's why you start getting the aches and pains. And so you take this product, and it literally rejuvenates your joints and muscles. And Dad and I both will attest. It works. In fact, somebody sent me a note the other day, one of our longtime listeners that was a former professional athlete, and said, man, you guys were right. And I was like, we're not lying to you. Of course we're right. It's a great product. OmegaXL.com is where you go /Phil. You're going to buy a bottle and get a second bottle for free. So that's going to give you a 2-month supply, which is about how long to really feel the maximum effects with the product. So it's OmegaXL.com /Phil, or you can call them at 800-844-4888. That's 800-844-4888.
No, he did not.
Or was it the stock market went down, his stock?
No, he got out perfect. He sold.
Did he feel bad about making money of why you jump off a building?
I'm saying there must have been.
There was probably something illegal that went on.
Yeah,
the
red flashing light started coming up around it, and but I just saw the picture of their family there, and I thought about this verse, because you see it, in that moment of how you get off track. I mean, who knows? I don't even know the situation. I just hate it for that wife and the kids, because I know whatever this was over, wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
No.
It wasn't worth it. There was your true treasure.
Yeah.
Right there.
He gave his life over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it all revolved around, he was the chief financier.
Boy, does that make the Hebrews text come to life? Woo.
Well, I just brought it up because it's sad, and I feel for his family, but I thought about it because he was the chief financial advisor for this a major company in our world, and it just didn't go well. But you can't have a pursuit or a love for money or immorality. I mean, he's the one, God, took a time out here and then gives us the motivation, because he said, I think it's interesting that, because he says, be content with what you have, because God has said. Well, this whole book of Hebrews is about putting your confidence in God's word. Think about it. He said, I cannot lie. It's impossible for me to lie. Mm-hmm. I've built this whole eternal possibility for you on my promises. The Hebrews 11, all the witnesses, what did they witness? The promises of God. So the motivation, I think, first for having an attitude of love is that you base it on God's promises. And what was his promise here? His presence was the promise. Never will I leave you, and never will I forsake you. Now, I do think...
And it was God who said, to add to your thinking there, it was God who said, you take these scriptures and you feed on them, because solid food, back in Hebrews chapter 5, the last statement in that letter, solid food is for the mature. You say mature people would not put everything on the love of money at all. But the solid food, the scriptures that you take, you say, well, where's this food coming from? By God said, I'll never leave you. He said, just read what I've said to you, because if who by constant use, you take the scriptures and you use them, have trained themselves, so it's not a day or two thing, no. This is a lifestyle. They've trained themselves to distinguish good from evil. You say, the scriptures have got you on a level to where you know you shouldn't put everything into how much money you make and how fast it comes, because it can be a detriment and it can cost you your life, as you just said with the guy jumping off the building. He was a little bit too solidly controlled by the love of money.
I mean, the bottom line is, when we look back on our lives,
you don't jump off buildings, because you lost some money in the stock market.
Right. Or you're going to be in trouble for doing something. And that,
yeah.
But what I was going to say is, so that's a quote from Deuteronomy 31. And when I went back and read that, Al, you probably know more details about it than I do, but 31:6 says, and this is basically the Lord giving them the promise that they would cross over to the promised land.
Yeah, they were right there at the door.
And he said, Moses, you're not going to be able to go,
right,
because there was some consequence of his sin before.
Yep.
But he could see it from a distance. So you get to verse 6. Of course, they're all scared, because they're like, well, how do we know they're going to let us live there? Or, what is, I mean, there was a lot of unknowns. And you got to think about it. Talking about being poor, they've been wandering around for
40 years.
40 years.
And they were enslaved.
It made me think of
They were enslaved before that, so it's not like we got a lot of military might here.
I mean, for 30 years, we were all working hard.
They ate good when the quail came, but...
well, we were eating good for 30 years while we were building the duck calls, but guess what? We didn't have any money.
That's right.
And so, I mean, it was embarrassing. I remember even when I'd go out with my wife when we were dating, I mean, she's like, where do you want to go? And I said, well, how much money you got? She's like, how much money do I got? She's like, my dad's a preacher. I don't have any. And I said, well, looks like Taco Bell. They got that Sonic brown bag special.
Brown bag special.
But back then, I wasn't so easily offended, but I just think they work better. You know what I mean?
Probably.
Yeah, now these days.
Well, you didn't have many choices.
These days, I'm like, here. So look, verse 6 says, be strong, courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you, and he will never leave you nor forsake you. Now, here's why I bring this up. So I read this whole story, but what I found interesting is that in chapter 32, I can barely read my right.
Deuteronomy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in 47, they turned their backs on him. And it says, why would I have written this down? Yeah, 47, let's see. I got read 32. Maybe that's chapter 32? Well, it has to be. For some reason I want to read these verses.
At the top
47,
of,
it says,
chapter
32,
30.
47, it says, they are not just idle words for you, they are your life. By them you will live in the land you are... because I wanted to make the point that he's saying when God says something, they're not idle words. I mean, I like that statement. They are your life. Mm-hmm. The word of God is your life, based on the promise. So then in verse 50, watch what he says. There on the mountain that you have climbed, you will die and be gathered to your people, just as your brother Aaron died on Mount Hor and was gathered. Oh, this is when he wouldn't let Moses go up. This is because both of you broke faith with me in the presence of the Israelites. Therefore, verse 52, you'll see the land from a distance. So then I got 33:5. It says, let me see where I'm at here. For some reason, I want to read 5 through 7, but that's not right. I did this real late at night.
Well, chapter
Where did I
30,
put
you,
this
you
at?
could throw that in, Jace, when all these blessings and
Hold on.
curses I've set before you come upon you,
Must be 34.
and you take them to heart. Wherever the Lord your God disperses you among the nations, when you and your children return to the Lord your God and obey him with all your heart, with all your soul, according to everything I command you today, then the Lord your God will restore your fortunes and have compassion on you and gather you again to all the nations where he scattered them. In other words, he's going to take care of you.
Well, the point I was going to make, I got it now. It's in chapter 34, and because we know how the story played out.
Hang on, let's take our last break.
So in verse 5, Moses, the servant of the Lord, 34:5, died there, as the Lord has said. He buried him, and the Lord buried him. And he was 120 years
Whatever
old
that means.
when he died. Yeah, whatever that means.
The
'cause
Lord
he came
buried him.
back. And in verse 10, since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. And that's what I wanted to get to, because God had a relationship with him. He had given his promises. He says, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. But then a few verses after he said that, it actually says, because they went out, we know what the nation did, they turned their back on God, and what happened? He forsaked them. And so when people read that, they're like, well, I thought he said he would never do it, because they turned their back on him. It wasn't like his choice to do it. He gave his word. I'm going to carry you through. You trust me. And they...
Sounds like modern day America.
Yeah.
What he's saying is I didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
You did.
Exactly.
I'm still here. You know what's interesting about Moses, Jase? He was, until Jesus came, he came the closest to the presence of the Almighty God than anybody that's ever lived, which is why my theory is that when he went up on that mountain, he didn't get to go into Canaan. He just got to look at it from the mountain, but then he went on to the ultimate promised land. Because, all of a sudden we see the devil's disputing over his body. I mean, God just said, all right, come on up. Same thing happened with Elijah. So, some of the people that have lived on earth lived it in such a way that God says, you know what, you're not even going to face death. You just come on. You cross over, which is interesting. I mean, it's my theory. The Bible doesn't say that. It just says he buried him. But, I mean, when God buries you, I don't even know what that means.
But I think that's his answer. He's like, because really the irony in all this is, he's making a point here that you're pursuing something, whether it's money or sex or your own selfish ambition, or in this case, a religion without Jesus. And the irony of it is, when you go back to 31, it was like, well, he was pursuing them. The reason he made this statement, and that's the irony of our faith, is that it's not so much about what we pursue compared to knowing that God, the creator of the universe, is pursuing us. And once you stop and realize that and put your faith and trust in him, well, all of a sudden you start experiencing the promises that he gives. That's true, no matter what the circumstances look like. And the presence of God. Al, I was going to bring that up because you noticed
Love,
it too.
joy,
But when
peace.
you realize you're in the presence of God, not just on Sundays, but every day. I mean, I love good worship. I mean, I do. But you're in the presence of God. When he made this whole point about Moses, but he summed all that whole book up in one verse in Hebrews 3:6, where it says, you know why Jesus is better than Moses? Because you're his house. He's in you.
In you.
Moses, and you have all the verses about his face was glowing, and if you look straight to God, because a lot of people read that face to face, they're like, well, he couldn't have saw him face to face, or he would have just burned up or whatever. But he definitely had some kind of relationship where God buried him, and he was at the burning bush, and he experienced the presence of God in a way, others hadn't. But the same concept applies, that we have the presence of God inside. And that's what Hebrews 3:6 says. We are his house. Back to your point, Phil. We don't go to the house of God. I mean, we are the house of God.
But that's
I'll
why,
read it.
That's why I flipped it too, Jace, from fear to faithfulness. I mean, that's the flip.
That's why the
mean,
pulpit thing won't work.
That's why when he said be courageous, that's where I got this idea. Look, 3:5 says, Moses was faithful as a servant in all God's house, testifying to what would be said in the future. I mean, we just read it. But Christ is faithful as a son over God's house, and we are his house.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what it says.
that's us.
If we hold on to our courage and the hope of which we boast. That's why when he said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you, the first phrase of that quote from Deuteronomy 31 was, be strong and courageous. It may look like you're outnumbered, but I'm surrounding you. You're in the presence of God. That's what he's saying. So when it comes to money and, I lost my job and my wife left me, all the unfortunate incidents that happen in life, it may look like you're outnumbered. It may look terrible. It looks like impossible that you could love in that situation, continue to love anybody, because we get bitter and we get mad and we get angry and then we make mistakes and then it snowballs. And he's like, you're going to have to trust me. I mean, I think that's his point.
When Paul says this in Philippians 4, Jase, it drives the point home he just made. He says in verse 11, I'm not saying this because I am in need, because he said he wished he'd been able to express gratitude to the Philippian church. For I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances.
Right.
I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And then he says this verse, which is probably taken out of this context of contentment every day. I see it on tattoos. I see it on people's T-shirts because they apply it to a lot of things. But the point is what he's saying is you can say this only because of the contentment you get in Christ. I can do everything through him who gives me strength, meaning that I can be content always because of him.
Because even here he tied it to that. He's like, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. So we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can man do to me? What is the answer to the question? What can man do to me?
Nothing.
Nothing. Now, if people just realize that, they get some confidence.
It would help them greatly.
Yeah.
Especially, again, because he uses the word fear again. It always goes back to that. Remember this picture that was painted when the presence of God was there? Moses, he's got him stuffed in between two rocks as his presence is so powerful, but the people are looking up at it and they're so fearful. But what they don't realize is the presence of God is the ultimate thing that can make you invincible.
Well, that's the number one motivation for love, because you go to 1 John 4 and says, this is love for God. Not that we loved him, but that he loved us and gave his son for us. So I think that's the first motivation. The second one, which we'll get to in the bonus time, is the one Phil already did a podcast about this with himself, was that verse 7. Remember your leaders. Who spoke the word.
We were there.
Because I was going to say motivation number 2 is that because life is tough. We do have problems, making money and with relationships and broken homes and fear and all these things. So he's like, the number one answer is presence of God, word of God, promises of God. Then it's like, well, remember your leaders who spoke the word of God. Everybody needs a posse of people who are holding them accountable.
Yep.
And where you seek advice.
90% of all individuals I run into, 90%, when I see them and they come to talk, wherever they come from, made a big trip, drive for 1,000 miles, 90% of them, Jase, they're singing the blues.
Yeah.
They are singing the blues. I don't know what happened.
To your point, Phil, earlier, look, all the leaders.
Over and over.
All the leaders that are in my circle who hold me accountable, who I ask advice, none of them are pulpit preachers.
Which adds a little credence to what I've been.
Well, wait a minute, though. One of them is, I'm in your posse.
Well, you're in my posse, but, now we're...
I guess technically I'm not a pulpit preacher. So I want to talk about that.
But if you didn't know him like you know him away from the pulpit, it would be a
I'm saying
because
most
our
of the
relationship's
guys,
because we're brothers and we work together.
We're brothers. I wasn't counting my immediate family. I'm saying all the outside guys, Well, I guess one of them does preach occasionally out of the pulpit.
Well, you're destroying your whole illustration now.
Well, I was just making a point, though. 2 or 3 of them, off the top of my head, they're not. They're just leaders. They're leaders of their family. They love God. They know the Bible. So when I call these people, I think that's motivation number 2, because you don't want to get out there by yourself and try to tackle all of life's difficulties.
All right, so we got more to explore there, and I thought of 2 good pulpit stories for you, Dad, to hammer home your point.
Well, good.
So we'll do that in the overtime. If you want to follow us over, blazetv.com/unashamed, and subscribe to Blaze TV to get our overtime segments.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.